Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from Nashville, USA, Amanda Banks. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to be on the show.
Thank you. Amanda is the CEO of DeBanks, LLC, and Sports to Suits, LLC. She's the host of the weekly live show, Sports to Suits. So I now have her on the other side of the mic. So Amanda, let's start talking about DeBanks. Tell me a little bit about this venture and your motivation to start it.
Yeah, so it's really kind of an interesting story. So in March of 2020, my daughter's school got destroyed by a tornado, and that was right before COVID hit. So at the time, I was working in strategic partnerships and all things sales for a small analytics company. And so immediately my world kind of changed. My daughter was at home being homeschooled. And so really the motivation is we knew that entrepreneurship was going to be part of my journey at some point. And at that time I had a homeschooling kid. So we made the transition, and DeBanks really was this beautiful combination between my skill set and my business partner's skill set. And so we launched DeBanks, which is basically a workforce and economic development consulting company.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about what you do. Maybe with
So we work with, we do consulting work, and we work with organizations that are looking for reports or for some data exploration work, and really consolidated that information and putting it into usable and tactical insights.
Wow. So what you're telling me is that your clients send you a lot of their numbers, and you crunch the numbers, you prepare presentations and make them more readable.
That's correct. So my business partner is an economist.
Okay.
And my background is primarily strategic partnerships, sales, marketing, branding. And so between the two of us, we can do some incredible work and really make that information readable.
Fascinating. You also say that you want to focus on toxicity-free corporate ecosystems built on integrity, transparency, trust, and communication. Yep. Help me understand this, and please give an example.
Yeah, so my business partner and I both come from corporate backgrounds. I come from a healthcare space, technology space, and then she comes from nonprofit as well as other corporations. And when we started this company, really what our vision is to work with incredible people and do mission and impact focused work. And so, one of our biggest no's as far as clients that we'll work with is we just don't work with toxicity. So if there's a lot of drama, a lot of challenges there, we're really looking to make an impact to our clients and work with really incredible people and leaders that want to do great work. And so that's really where the toxicity-free ecosystems come into play.
And just to ask you a further question on this, I'm just trying to understand with numbers and with reports, etc. How do you determine what is toxic and what is not?
Well, so the reports themselves are not necessarily toxic, but just the companies that we work with. We want to work with really good quality people that are really looking to do great work in the world. And, what we found is sometimes in corporate, we focused on the money. We focused on, working with people, not necessarily choosing our clients. And so when we launched our companies, the focus is we want to work with clients that want to work with us and do it in great, positive, joyful ways. And so that's really, the data is not necessarily toxic, but sometimes the relationships can be. And so that's something that we just say no to.
I understand. But tell me also, what was the motivation to get into this kind of a venture when it's basically a lot of data? Is it something to do with the COVID that you had to work from home?
Yeah. So with my daughter being homeschooled, we really were forced to think through, how are we going to actually work together? How are we going to create, businesses together? And so we started thinking through, what does this look like for us? And so from a data and reporting perspective, my business partner is an economist. She's got 15 to 20 years in workforce and economic and labor economics. And so we really, truly went to the drawing board to think through, what skill sets do we have and what value can we deliver to our clients, and how can we do it sometimes in a remote working environment? And so that's how we went about launching DeBanks.
Wonderful. Now let's move to the other venture that you have, which is Sports to Suits.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this venture.
Yeah, so this really came out of DeBanks. So we were starting to do a lot of research work around the workforce and labor force. And we started realizing obviously substantial gaps. I mean, this is something that there's a problem with pretty much all over the world right now. And so, I was a former athlete. I have a lot of passion around the athletic community, as well as a beautiful community of former athletes that have really seen a lot of success in business. So we started doing a lot of research work around, why is this transitionary period so difficult for certain people, meaning going from sports into suits or going into business. And so we launched the company separately. We're building out a technology platform to help collegiate level and professional level athletes, so elite level athletes, transition from sports to business. And really what we're solving for is the education opportunity in connection to good quality opportunities and jobs. So that kind of built off of DeBanks and really became its own separate entity just due to what we've created.
Amazing. I seem to have missed the part about your being an athlete, but I'd love to understand from you what did you do and at what level were you playing?
Yeah. So I was a high level competitive gymnast.
Okay.
So I started gymnastics really, really young, as a lot of kids do. Immediately became passionate about the sport. I had a unique talent and gift for it. So I became a level 10 gymnast around 10 or 11 years old. So for anybody that's tuning in that doesn't know gymnastics, typically there's levels 2 through 10. Then you go into junior and senior elite. And so Simone Biles is the senior elite. That's the most notable gymnast I can think of in the world. But I was a level 10 gymnast, very young, and transitioned out of the sport and had a lot of challenges around that transition, which is where a lot of the passion comes from of helping solve this issue for a lot of other people.
Amazing. One more question of you being a gymnast. What I've seen of young people who take up gymnastics, it's a very high pressure environment that you work in. As you transition out of being a gymnast, a level 10 gymnast, what were some of your learnings and what were some of the challenges you went through?
Yeah, so gymnastics is a sport of perfectionism.
Correct.
So everything is judged around the perfect 10. The scoring mechanisms have changed a little bit, but when I was doing gymnastics, everything was that perfect 10. And so that was ingrained in me as a young kid. And transitioning out of the sport, your entire team is that of your sport. Your entire ecosystem is built around gymnastics, especially a high level gymnast.
Correct.
And so transitioning out, I really struggled with identity issues, went to drugs and alcohol and you name it. But a lot of that had to do with, I had absolutely no idea who I was as a person outside of that as an athlete. And so I see that struggle with a lot of other athletes as well, which is why we're building out this platform and this ecosystem through Sports to Suits.
Incredible. And, I've spoken to several sports people, and when one is at a very high level of performance and you're young, your bodies can respond, whether it's cricket or hockey or soccer or gymnastics. The big challenge, and I think you're addressing it through Sports to Suits, is how do I land on my feet? Not from a gymnast perspective, but how do I land on my feet and build a life after I'm 28, 29, 30, 35 onwards? Give me some examples or some perspectives of what is happening to sports people.
Well, it's very much that identity issue. A lot of people, their entire lives, I transitioned out of the sport really, really young. So I had the blessing of going through these challenges when I was young and could do some things that weren't necessarily the right things to do, right? But I see a lot of, in your 20s and your 30s, when you're transitioning out of the sport, your entire life is that of the sport. And when you transition out, you may have education, you may not have education, you may have a clear and defined career pathway, you may not. But the biggest challenge is you don't necessarily know who you are or what your path is outside of that sport because you've been so laser focused in everything as it relates to whatever sport you're in.
Wow. So now coming back to Sports to Suit. So what happens if I'm an athlete who has now matured and has come out of the so-called competitive arena? I reach out to you, and how do you help me as a sports person?
Yeah, I mean, what we're really advocating here is really to start thinking through what is your career pathway outside of sports.
Mhm.
You know, that right now it's very reaction based. We would really love for this to be more of a proactive
Mm.
scenario. Most of the time, people will have life and purpose outside of the sport, about 99 to 100% of people, okay?
Correct.
But really to think through this and create a clear and defined pathway even before that transitionary period
Mm.
happens. I'm working with a lot of athletes one-on-one right now just
Mm.
because the technology platform is not developed fully.
Mhm.
But yes, I'm working with people to help them try to figure out life and purpose outside of sports and get them connected to good quality opportunities that fit their aptitudes and skill
Mm.
sets.
Mm. And for my viewers and listeners, give me an example of someone, without any names, of course, on
Yeah.
how you've helped them find their life and purpose.
Yeah, so I worked with an athlete, and this is one of my favorite athletes that I've worked with thus far. So he came to me through a mutual connection, and he was transitioning out of the NFL.
Mhm.
And he did have a great college degree, went to a very prestigious university, and he really was trying to figure out what am I going to do outside of football training.
Mm.
And when I initially reached out to him and we connected, you know, he mentioned he wanted to open a restaurant and he wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And I kind of had him halt the brakes a little bit and was like,
Mhm.
have you ever worked in a restaurant before?
Mm.
Do you
Mm.
know anything about this
Mm.
industry?
Mm.
And, you know, through continuous conversation, I was able to get him connected to a coffee shop here locally that was opening up
Okay.
and get him kind of that opportunity to work in that coffee shop, to
Mhm.
learn what it's like to launch a coffee shop.
Mm.
And through that, now obviously he's exploring entrepreneurship journeys,
Mm.
he's working in the coffee shop, you know, and he's really kind of finding his place, which is such a
I see.
beautiful thing
Yeah.
to happen and to watch.
Mm. And just thinking back to what you said, one of the biggest challenges a lot of sports people who are transitioning out face is who am I? Uh, it's also from the incredible amount of adulation to not being recognized.
Yep.
How do people handle this kind of a challenge, and how do you support them?
Yeah, I mean, the statistics are alarming. You know, there's been a lot of statistics that have been developed over the years. One of
Mm.
the notable ones was a few years ago, Sports Illustrated released, you know, 80% of retired NFL players go broke after the
Mm.
first 3 years outside of the league. And
Mm.
so, you know, really, I think awareness is the biggest thing that we're doing right now. You know, I
Mhm.
launched Sports to Suits Live, which is a live video show that
Yeah.
highlights former athletes and share their stories around this transition.
Wow. Mm.
And I think that awareness is the biggest thing that we're kind of leaning into right now is highlighting that this is a massive problem in the industry,
Mm.
and trying to create, you know, holistic platforms and solutions that help address this from a scalable perspective.
Fascinating. I was reading about you, you say that every conversation is the opportunity to make a positive impact in the lives of others. Um, Simple statement, but I'd love to get your perspective with an example of what your belief is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so even in this conversation, you know, if you and I touch the life of just one person and
Mm.
plant the seed that that person then takes and does whatever it is in their life that they want to
Mm.
do as far as moving forward, we've done our job, right? This has been a success in my opinion. And
Mm.
so every single conversation, regardless of who it is, has the ability to impact the life of that other person or
Mm.
community. And so I go into every single conversation with that mindset. And I
Mhm.
think that's a powerful thing.
Very interesting. You also say that uh, innovative thought leadership to every conversation is important. How do you structure something like this?
I mean, it's asking the right questions, right? I think everybody comes with a unique perspective. I carry every conversation with a lot of curiosity.
Mhm.
I want to learn what other people are thinking or where their backgrounds, where they're coming from. And I think
Mhm.
that, you know, going into conversations, one with knowing that this has the ability to impact the life of the other person, but also
Mhm.
two, that I can pull some innovative thought leadership out of this conversation and really
Mhm.
get to learn about things.
Mhm.
That's really where that lies.
Fascinating. So now let me move to a few questions for you personally.
Okay.
My viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little better. But my first question to Amanda is, that for someone who has been a sports person at such a high level and is now an entrepreneur, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Yeah, so one was that tornado, and it may be a little bit odd here, but when we decided to homeschool my daughter, really from a professional perspective, that's where my life dramatically had to change.
Right.
So that was a key milestone. I had such a unique opportunity to experience education through her eyes as well, and also see some of the gaps, which is what a lot of what we're doing with Sports to Suits is, as far as the educational component. That was a huge milestone for me. It takes a lot of courage to make that shift
Absolutely.
from corporate into entrepreneurship. So that was a win for me for sure. I think the next one is launching the video podcast. I think there's a lot of power in conversation. Once again, if you have the ability to leverage conversation to impact the life of just one person, it's such a beautiful thing. And so launching that podcast has really helped us create a community. So I do encourage other people to launch podcasts or video shows or whatever's on your heart to do so. And then I will say a huge major milestone for Sports to Suits was our first major contract. I mean, as an entrepreneur, that first contract, regardless of how large or small, that's a big milestone. And so we're super proud of that. And so I would say those are three major milestones in my life.
Fantastic. I hope you framed the first dollar and kept it in your office.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal, but most importantly, it really pulled together the entire vision. We really like the client that we're working with. We really support their vision, and it's just a beautiful partnership. And that's something that we're very proud of as well.
Fabulous. My next question to you is, what does success mean to Amanda?
Yeah, so success to me it's very simple. So that I woke up, that my family absolutely knows that I love them, that they're happy, that they're healthy, and that I've impacted the life of a single person in that day. I think that we focus on really big, large, audacious goals sometimes. And for me, success is just taking one step forward and making sure that the people in the community that I'm in and that I'm supporting and that are supporting me, that they know that they're loved, and that they're able to continue to learn and grow as well.
Wonderful. And a follow-up question from that is, who or what inspires you?
Yeah, my daughter. I have a 12-year-old daughter. I have two stepsons as well, but really, my daughter's a unique individual, and I really get to learn through the eyes of her. I've found that children don't necessarily have or carry a lot of the biases that a lot of adults do. And so having the opportunity to really learn through her is so inspiring to me. I get to see on a daily basis, obviously, what it's like to live with true curiosity and love and compassion. And that's very inspiring to me. It helps keep me moving.
Fabulous. I have time for two more questions. My next question is, what would your advice be to a young sports person or a young sports person's parents as they start out on their journey?
Yeah, I would be very clear on, just know that this is not probably going to be a lifelong adventure, and to start thinking about life and purpose outside of sports. A lot of elite level athletes focus on one sport or one thing, and that's necessary in a lot of different regards. But I would also say, from a parent perspective, start incorporating other things and identify passions or area of interest outside of just that one sport. The individual is not just good at that one sport. So really starting to dive into what are things that, we can incorporate into this atmosphere to ensure that once the sport is done, that they have life and purpose outside of sports.
Very interesting. And my last question to you, based on your amazing journey, what would you say are three lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and our conversation?
Yeah, so I would say to lay out mission and values and what's meaningful to you, and be very clear and specific on what those are, and make sure that everything that you do moving forward in life is in alignment with those mission and values. I would also say there's a lot of power in just taking one step forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, we tend to look at the big picture goal, which is very necessary, right? But I think that there's a lot of power in just being focused on taking one step forward. I would also say surround yourself with other people that inspire you and that you can learn from. One of my core values is very much around continuous learning and challenging myself.
Yeah.
And so surrounding yourself with an incredible ecosystem that will challenge you, that will love you, that will support you, is another piece throughout my career that has allowed me to see the success that we are seeing and that will continue to grow moving forward.
Amazing. Amanda, on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons of, lay out your mission and your values, understand the power of taking one step at a time forward, of course, and surround yourself with people who you can learn from. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about DeBanks and your journey. Thank you for speaking to me about sports suits. I think what you're doing for sports people, not just in the US, but probably around the world, will be a game changer for so many people who have given their entire life, early life, to sports, and then are stuck on where to go next.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate your time, and I'm so grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.